a stormy bracket.
What's going on, everyone? So welcome to my latest video. This is my latest catch-up video. This is where I talk about all the films I saw in October of 2022. This is both theatrical and, of course, streaming movies. If you're new to the channel, this will not be fully in-depth review in regards to all these movies I talked about. This will just be me talking about them very briefly. If you guys want my full in-depth thoughts on these movies, you guys can check me out on Letterboxd. If you don't know what Letterboxd is, it is a great website where it brings film buffs, film critics, casual audiences all together, and you're able to log movies. It's great. Would highly recommend it. I'll put the link down below for mine. But guys, I watched 7 2022 films in the month of October 2022. So now I will be talking about them in spoiler-free fashion. So guys, enough exposition. Let's get started. So kicking things off with the month of October, I saw We're All Going to the World's Fair. This is on HBO. I heard briefly about it on terms of it being a good horror film and everything. It got pretty good reviews. And I have to say, I was kind of disappointed by it. Didn't know anything about it going into, but still, given the ratings and everything, I just wasn't a big fan of this movie. It was very, very, very slow, to the point where I really didn't care much about what was going on. The filmmaking is fine for sure. It is well acted, but overall, it's a pretty disposable movie. Just wasn't something I was able to fully engage with. But I do know that there's an audience out there. I know that there are a lot of people based on Letterboxd that really dug this movie, and I can respect that. But for me, I was kind of disappointed by this movie, and that's why, for me personally, I'll be giving We're All Going to the World's Fair a... Next up, speaking of horror movies, it is October, so I did watch a bunch of horror films, but I finally sat down and watched The Sadness, which is on AMC+, which I do have a free trial of currently, and I'm so glad that I watched The Sadness. I heard quite a bit about this movie from a couple friends, and did not disappoint. This is a good film. I was captivated the entire runtime. It is something that I'm definitely going to be revisiting somewhere down the line. It is a good movie. If you want a good bloody horror film, I mean, holy cow, this movie is very, very gory. I'm not saying that's the reason why I thought it was great, but if you do prefer, in terms of horror films, a lot of violence, look no further. This is definitely one of the most violent films I've seen of the year. It's quite graphic. That being said, the ideas, the pacing, the themes that it's dealing with, the ending, it's all stuff that I really, really dug. And that's why, for me, personally, I will be giving The Sadness a... Next up, I watched Hellraiser, the new Hulu movie, and I did see the original Hellraiser, what was it, 3 years ago, and I liked it. I actually quite liked it, and I remember saying to myself, wow, I heard that there was a bunch of sequels, but none of them, were even close to the quality of this one. So it's probably a franchise that they're done with. And then sure enough, several months later, I heard the news that they were actually doing a reboot. And here we are with the reboot. And I'm not going to do any comparing and contrasting of the two because they are quite different. I will say, as just a movie, Hellraiser is fine. It is okay. I liked some of the aspects. I thought it was well acted. I think that towards the end it was pretty engaging for the most part. Just there were times where I felt the cinematography was problematic, and by that I mean I thought that it was too dark, which I know I'm going to sound like Game of Thrones fans, because I know a lot of people had issues with Game of Thrones season 8 episode 3. I didn't have that issue, but here I did have an issue with Hellraiser with the way it was. I don't know if it was the way that it was color graded or if it was a streaming issue. I don't know. There's only one way to find out, and that's if this gets a physical media release. So it's like, it's a criticism. It's a personal criticism. It's not something where I'm like, oh yeah, this is something that everyone's going to agree on. Because again, who knows? If you watch this video a couple years from now, it might be like, oh yeah, there's a physical media release. And yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. So I don't know. Regardless, I'm all over the place with this. This movie, it's okay. It's pretty disposable though. I'm not going to lie. Like, I am talking about this movie now several weeks after I've seen it, and I only remember a little bit about this movie. It was diverting when I watched it, and that's enough for me to say, yeah, I would recommend you check it out. So Hellraiser, personally, will be giving a... Next up, we're back to disappointments. We have number 4, Amsterdam. Amsterdam is a new David O. Russell movie. I was quite looking forward to this movie. I like Silver Linings Playbook quite a lot, and I also liked American Hustle. And The Fighter, I think, is rock solid. I do need to revisit that movie, but that being said, the Amsterdam cast is incredible. Christian Bale, Margot Robbie, John David Washington. It's a great cast. And the first half hour, I was lock and loaded. Like, I was very much so all in with this movie. But then it flashed back, and I'm not gonna lie, as soon as it flashed back, I lost interest, and the rest of the movie was not able to sustain my interest of that first 30 minutes. It's a movie that I can see it possibly having a cult following down the line. But for me, I was disappointed. I felt the pacing really was dragging. I really didn't care about the characters by the second and third act. And it's just a movie that things happen. It feels like it's an excuse to have an A-list cast just, do improv. And I don't know. That worked for American Hustle for me. Here, just doesn't do it for me. So, Amsterdam, I hate to say it, but I personally will be giving a... Next up, another disappointment. We have Halloween Ends. Halloween Ends is something that on paper I should love. I absolutely adore the opening scene with what they do with Corey, and that opening scene is just simply outstanding, especially with what happens, and then it cuts right to the credits. I think that was brilliant. A great way of opening the movie. It really sets the stage. But unfortunately, the movie's not able to captivate. I mean, they take advantage of that, which is a shame because there is potential with this premise. Unfortunately, the execution of the directing, the writing, it definitely shows that there's like 4 writers. It's terrible. It's really, really bad. And it's baffling because, like I said, if you had maybe had one writer, it would be such a precise movie and it would be so focused. But because there's so many different writers, it's just all over the place. People are just doing things, characters do things, and then next thing you know, it's like, oh no, I didn't actually mean that. Like, one character brings 2 people together, and then next thing you know, several scenes later, it's like, oh no, I see it in your eyes, you're evil. And it's like, what? You're the one that brought them together. It makes no sense. I do like the score. Per usual, John Carpenter gives a great score. I loved that aspect. But this is a movie that it's trying to be original, and I think that's why I'm being a little bit more generous in my rating. But it is something that I feel like if this was given to a different director and different writer, we would have a much better movie. Wouldn't necessarily please the fans of Halloween, but we would have a much better movie. But alas, it seems like it's an L on all fronts for everyone that watched this. So for me, I hate to say it, but Halloween Ends, I'm personally going to be giving a... Next up, we have Call Jane, a movie that no clue what it was going into. Coming out of it, it has its heart in the right place. It has some pretty interesting ideas. It's well acted, but it's very empty. And I think that's probably because the last 10 minutes kind of meanders and it just throws a lot of information to us as audience members, despite previously taking its time with everything. So you get thrown a lot of information towards the end, and then it's like next thing you know, everyone's one big whole happy family, and you're like, wait, what? This development seems kind of what? And then it ends, and you're like, oh, what? Okay, whatever. Again, it's a movie that has its heart in the right place, and I admire that, and I do like the filmmaking, the long takes, the filmic cinematography itself. It's really, really good. Again, great acting as well, but it's just something that it's a lightweight movie. It's something that has some interesting ideas, some inkling ideas that have potential, but they're not really fully fleshed out, unfortunately. And it's kind of narrow, too. But that being said, Call Jane, I'll give a light recommendation. I'll personally be giving Call Jane a... And last but not least, we have the movie that I was really, really looking forward to and was hoping, crossing my fingers, that it would reach theaters near me before the end of the month, and it did. Last but not least, we have Tar, which is directed by Todd Field, the same director that did In the Bedroom, as well as Little Children. Yeah, here it is. As well as Little Children. I really like this movie. That's why I own it on DVD, because there's no Blu-rays or anything of this movie, unfortunately. But I'm a huge fan of Little Children. The movie. I think it's such a great movie. It's very, very well done. And that was the last movie that he did, which was 2006. So 16 years later, he's finally having a movie come out. That, combined with Cate Blanchett, had me really pumped for Tar. But I can't lie. I thought this movie was just all right. It's well acted for sure. I do admire Todd Field's ambition with the way he directed this movie. There's a lot of subtle touches of this movie. A lot of trust in the audiences that I very much so respect. But unfortunately, I feel like the ideas, because there's so much trust in the audiences, I feel like it could have and should have been trimmed down a lot. This movie is clocking at nearly 3 hours. And I hate to say it, it feels that length. It's paced in a way that's very languid, like the unfolding of events that occur. It's very languid. It's very, very methodical in its pacing. But for me, it just didn't work in that aspect. But it's, again, a movie that its themes and messages, similar to Call Jane, its themes and messages I find to be intriguing and fascinated by. But I just felt like it didn't fully capitalize on them, if that makes sense. But let me preface this. I think that Tar is worth your time for Kate Blanchett's performance alone. She is a force to be reckoned with. Truly great. And I know I'm in the minority with saying that the movie itself is okay, but you have to see the movie for at least her performance. She is really, really good. Can definitely see her getting an Oscar nomination for this movie. But, for me, Tar, personally, will be giving a... So yeah, guys, those are my thoughts on these movies very briefly. The ones that I saw for the month of October 2022. November is going to be really hectic, so I'm curious to see how many movies of 2022 I'll be watching in November, as well as December. But guys, let me know your thoughts on these movies, if you have seen any of them. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And once again, I do appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget the subscription, notification bell, follow me down Letterboxd, and I will catch you guys later.